Evening. Thanks for joining us. We are, for the sake of the webinar quality, everyone's going to be muted and all your videos are going to turn off. And so if you have any questions, use the chat panel and I am moderating that. And so I will respond or ask the presenter to respond. So tonight we are pleased to present Amy Chow, who's going to be talking about analyzing real world data with the FX9750G3 graphing calculator from Casio. And I am Karen Greenhouse. I am going to be monitoring the chat as this goes on. So if you have any questions, put it in there. And I'm going to let Amy Chow introduce herself. And I'm going to turn my computer off.
Your computer or your camera?
My camera.
Yeah, please don't turn your computer off.
I won't turn off the computer because there goes the whole webinar.
Yeah, thank you, Karen. My name, as Karen said, my name is Amy Chow, and I am the National Training and Product Manager at Casio in their education division. I've been there for the last 10 years, I think. Previously, before that, I was a high school math teacher, anywhere from Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2 mainly, those courses. So as Karen mentioned, today we're going to be taking a look at the 9750G3. Let me minimize that real quick. And so this is the emulator software. This calculator was launched this summer. It retails for $59.99, so it is a great deal for a pretty, for an all-encompassing but kind of basic black and white graphing calculator. I don't like necessarily the word basic because it does everything that,
yeah, I don't
a regular, it is, okay, so we'll use black and white. How's that?
There you go. I mean, it's a powerful.
It is a very powerful calculator. So I'm actually going to turn off my video now because I want us to focus just on the calculator itself. So we are going to take a look at some real world data. So the first thing I want to do is actually capture some data from everyone that's here on tonight. And if we don't have enough data, we'll kind of throw in some other stuff based on of what we know. So if you will, in the chat panel, give me your height in inches, if you can. If not, we'll do the conversions, and your shoe size. All right, so your height in inches and your shoe size. So Casio graphing calculators run off of main menu system. So you use the arrow keys or the number or letters in the bottom right corner to work your way through to the different menu options. So we're going to go to stat. So that is statistics, which is number 2, to enter our data. So I'm going to put list height in list 1 and shoe size in list 2. And we're going to go ahead and start collecting some of the data we have here. So we have 67. And anytime you enter a number in the calculator, you need to make sure you press to execute. I'm actually going to use my keyboard just because it's a little bit quicker to type out the numbers versus using the number on the keypad itself. All right, so we have 68 and 10.5, 65 and 9, 66 and 9.5.
Oh, Tom, I was just going to say the same thing. I always get asked that question.
Yes.
And
the question is, what about the sizing difference between men and women? And Karen, what were you going to say about that?
Well, I was going to say, when I do this with other people and kids, I don't take that into account. It probably makes a difference, but it really doesn't in the data relationship.
Right. It works. So, I mean, we could definitely absolutely put things in 2 different columns and have, like maybe do, height for women and shoe size, and then take a look at in list 3 and 4. I mean, however you want to separate out your data as you're doing this with your classes.
Comparison.
Yes.
I guess, but
I think we found another one. All right, I think that's pretty good. Six data points. That's not too bad. Definitely would have loved to have some more, but that's okay. So we'll take a look at that. So we have height and shoe size. And so one thing you'll notice up here, this second row here is a sub. That's like a subcategory or subtext. So you can actually type out, shortcut keys to kind of list out what each of these are. So we can, for height, I can use, let's type out. HGT for height. and then we'll arrow over and we'll do the same over here just so that we know, and we'll just put shoe. So we are limited on characters as far as how many characters you can type out. I think we can probably fit another 6. Yeah, so we have the 4 here. So, I mean, I could have added SZ maybe for size, shoe size, if that, you know, if you really want to get specific. But this would also help out if you're taking a look at the difference between men and women. You could say height W for women and then height M for men, you know, or however you want to categorize that. So it does kind of give you, you know, a little bit of room to add extra letters for, you know, deciphering between the two. All right, so we're going to take a look at height first. You know, some things we might want to talk about with the students. Well, what's the average height for the class or the group that we're talking about? What's the mean? Is there that is mean, sorry. What is the median? What is the mode? Is there one that's common, right? So we can do that automatically in the calculator, but I also wanted to take a look at how you could do that and have your students actually calculate this manually themselves. So, you know, if you wanted to, you could have them collect the data on a piece of paper first, or you could also type out the data points here in this area here on the emulator software. To do that, you could actually go to the word keylog here and change into editor, and this allows you to edit and add in like text here. But another way to do this is if we press menu and arrow over, go back and go to run matrix, and we would need to kind of know what some of that text would need to be. And so instead of having to memorize that, I'm going to go to the button here that says OPTN, which is short for option. And the first button above F, or tab above F1, is list. So this allows you to figure out and find different options that you can manipulate your list with. So this tab here actually types out the word list, but if you'll notice above the button, the one button, it's also there in yellow, so we can use that shortcut. I'm going to clear that out. F2 actually takes your list and will convert it into a matrix if you want. And then a few other things that you want to do, maybe sequence it. But the next thing I want to do is actually press F6 because there's more options here, and I can use these kind of shortcuts here to find the mean, the median, and then, you know, mode, we would actually have to look at it, but we can also find the minimum and the maximum. So kind of gathering those 5 number summaries in case we want to, you know, actually have the students graph and create their own graphs instead of having, you know, the calculator do it. So first thing I'm going to press is find the mean. So F3, and then I'm going to press Shift 1 and then type in the number 1 again, and then close my parentheses, because now I'm telling the calculator I want it to find the mean of list 1, which was our height. Keep that in mind. So on average, our group of data is 67.16. So anyone close to 67? I think that was Tom. Yeah, Tom was pretty close. Karen, I think you were pretty close.
Exactly.
I was like, you're 67 inches. So you were probably the closest.
Wow, that sounds really familiar. Who is, oh, it's me. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's you. So, you know, I was 64 inches, 5'4", so I am definitely on the lower end of things.
So in the middle. It's true. I am considered an average height woman now.
Yes.
I used to be considered really tall when I was younger, but I guess people have caught up.
And then taller. And one thing Tom mentioned too is that it's not a very big range, because if we go back and look at our our data points, you know, we go 67, 68, 65, 66, 64, and then we jump to 73.
Yeah.
So we're definitely not looking at a very large range. So, you know, with your classes, and if you have more people, that range could definitely increase, and that'll help with your average as well. So that's pretty good. And that's something else you can have a discussion on, you know, talking about, you know, data, like does our small sampling of data match the larger population of data that you can find, you know, online, have the students research what is an average height for females. And then maybe it is a good idea to, you know, separate males and females, or separate, you know, the differences, or even have is there a general average for everyone, you know, around. So, all right. So I'm going to go back. So I'm going to menu 1 to go back to run matrix, because the next thing I want to take a look at is taking a look at our median. So doing the same thing, 66.5. All right. And then we can find our, yeah, it's pretty close to the average that we got. And we know that 64 was our minimum. And just in case you want to, you know, if you have a lot of numbers, it's a little bit harder to figure out maybe your minimum and your maximum. So we have, you know, most of our 5-number summary here, you know, so can we then go through and create a plot of this, and what would it look like? You know, and is a box and whisker plot the best? So that is how we would do that. If you wanted the students to, you know, to do the calculations themselves, you know, each individual calculation, you know, specifically. But as I mentioned, the calculator will also go through and do those calculations for you. So since we have our numbers in list 1, we can press F2 for the calc. And have it go to calc, and then if we have any questions, we have 1 variable and 2 variable here, depending on what we're looking at. But if you take a look at above F6, it says the word set. So this is just to double check that if in case I maybe switched the order, you know, I typed it in differently, or I wanted to look at a different list, my 1 variable X list is list 1 and my frequency is 1. And then we can take a look real quickly at our 2 variable options, list 1, list 2. If we needed to change it, we could press F1 and then type in the number for it. But
that would be if you had done, like, say, the splitting up by male, female, that you'd actually have 4 lists. So you'd have to do it, you'd have to set it up different.
Right. Or even if you split it up by class periods, you know, maybe first and second period, comparing them in different, just different options of how you want to do things. Yeah. So I'm not making any changes because our lists are good the way we were entered. So I'm going to press exit, and now I'm going to press F1 for my 1 variable. So real quickly, we can see that our average is what we calculated previously, and then our minimum, our median, and our maximum were all kind of the same numbers. All right. So that's basics of just some of those you know, calculations that you want to do with a single set of data. So now let's actually go back, and I'm going to press exit. This is something this button you would press in order to kind of go back a page if you wanted to go back. So now let's actually take a look at what some of the graphs look like. So I'm going to press F1 for graph. And here, again, I see the word set here. The default settings for graphs is a scatter plot. So because we're only looking at list 1, I have to go in and make a change there. Otherwise, if I press graph 1, I'm going to get an error. So I'm going to press F6 for set, and you'll notice we can graph up to 3 different graphs at the same time. So make sure, you know, whichever graph you're wanting to graph the data on, you pick that one. So we are going to use stat graph 1. So now I'm going to arrow down, and I'm going to choose my graph type. So once again, remember this little arrow tab above F6 means that there are more options. So I'm going to press that because I really don't see, you know, a type of graph that I would use for a 1 variable graph just yet. I mean, I could do a pie chart, but is a pie chart really the best, you know, representation of this type of data? So that's a good question. So Karen asks, is there a histogram? Which there is on page 2. So you'll see we have 2 options here that I would actually have the students talk about and maybe pick between. So we have option 1 here for histogram, and then we also have an option for our box and whisker, our median box plot. So let's take a look at our histogram first. So I'm going to press F1, and then you'll notice that the options here change, or your settings here change. So is list 1 where our X list needs to be? Yes, and then our frequency is 1. All right, so my settings are good. So now I press exit. And now I can press the tab for F1. And it's going to start at 64, all right, which is where we know our median, our minimum number, and then a width of 1. That looks good. So now I'm going to press execute to draw. And there we go. And now here's a good question to ask. Why are all the bars the same height? If we needed to look at it, We could also press Shift F1 for trace to take a look at all the different bars we have here.
It's because they only occurred once.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
So if we'd had 2 people at 67, that
would have definitely, yes, that would have changed our graph.
So our data is just boring as well.
Yes, our data is very boring tonight. Apologies for that, but
exciting at all.
Yep. So, that's your histogram, and we can go back, and now let's actually go to set again, and let's change this to graph 2. And I'm going to change graph 2, and I'm going to choose a box and whisker plot. And, do we want to keep our outliers on or turn them on or off? And obviously we don't have a lot of data points, so we're going to just leave that as off. Maybe we can consider that one person that is 73 inches tall an outlier, but we're going to just leave it as that. I'm going to press exit, and now I'm going to press F2 for graph 2 and take a look at our data. So clearly we lean more towards the shorter side of things today than anything, or we have that one outlier or anomaly. But I'm going to press exit now, because if you look above F4, some of you might have seen this, it says SEL, that's for select, because I can actually graph all 3 graphs at the same time. And so if I wanted to take a look at different histograms or different box and whisker plots together, this is how I could do it. So, this is going to just be real interesting to see. Remember, we had a histogram in StatGraph 1 and then our box and whisker plot in StatGraph 2. And so both of those are now on. And if I press F6 to draw, I'm going to leave that the same. Well, that didn't turn out really pretty. They're kind of overlaid on top of each other. So that might not.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, so that may not have been the best, but it's kind of neat to see, where each of the markers fall, as far as cool. Your 5 number summary.
Median, it's showing that right there,
exactly
in the middle of those 4. It kind of actually lines up nicely. It'd
be a
discussion to have with kids.
Yeah, definitely. And so, so that's the basics of graphing, one variable statistics. So now, since we also collected shoe size, let's go back and actually graph the 2 values. So I'm going to go to set real quick, and I'm going to actually take a look at graph 3 and notice that does say that it is a scatter plot. So I'm going to just use graph 3 as my graph for both height and shoe size. So I'm going to press F3. All right, and we can take a look and discuss that relationship. What kind of relationship does that have between height and shoe size? Does it look linear? Does it look like it's quadratic, or is it cubic? It quite possibly could be cubic.
Well, I like when I do this with people, it tends to look a lot more linear than ours is. But again, we have a really small data set.
Yes.
Because that does not, I guess you could fit a linear to it, but it's not.
We could. And you know what? Let's go ahead and fit it linear to it. So in order to fit it linear, once we have it graphed, you're going to go to calculate again. And remember, this brings up your 2 variable, because that is what we're looking at. It doesn't give you the option for 1 variable, but it gives you all the options for your regressions. So you can see here we have, all different options to choose from, but we're going to test out linear. So I'm going to go to X, and we do have 2 options for linear. One that's more common when we talk about, slope and y-intercept, or, the common or the parent function of a linear equation. But then we also have the a plus bx for those that are more statistics focused. So depending on how, what you want to use. We're going to use ax plus b in this situation. So I'm going to press F1. And there is our linear regression. So we have our slope, our y-intercept, and we can take a look at our correlation values here. So not too bad, definitely 100% is what you want, right, for your correlation, your R value. But that's not too far off. Yeah. So I'm going to do 1 of 2 things. You see you have 2 options now. So you can copy that equation or you can draw it. I'm going to copy it first, because what that will do, if I press F5, is actually put it into your graph function. And so that you can take a look at this equation later, or maybe use it to make estimates or get, to make conjectures. So now I'm going to press F6 draw.
Oh, not bad.
And yeah, it's not too bad. You can see that one person here. It's pretty much on the dot.
Isn't that me? That's probably me.
And that might be you. So you know what? Let's press Shift Trace. And see.
67. Yeah.
Yeah, 67.
Yeah, so
pretty close. Yep. So Karen, you are right on our
average.
You are very average. So and that's kind of fun to see. And then we can talk about, well, what is the differences between, as you get further along into maybe more advanced statistics, the mean, the difference and the average difference overall with all the different classes. So that is the basics with scatter plots and regressions. So now actually let's go back out. I'm going to go to the main menu. And now I'm going to arrow down to graph, because now we can talk about making actual conjectures, right? So you see here, this is our equation, regression equation with all the decimals. So it's kind of nice that you can copy it so that you don't have to write down all those decimal values. And so now I'm going to press F1 to select it so that it is active, all right? And if we go to draw, our window is already set up, which is good. So now we can actually press Shift F5 for GSolve, or just F5, and press F6, and we can do some different calculations. So, if we know the height, can we figure out what someone's shoe size should be? If we know their shoe size, can we figure out what their height should be? So one example, say someone that's, well, I need to turn my keylogger off. 7 to 8 inches tall. Would they have a shoe size of maybe 10.5? 10 and a half, we know it, shoe sizes go in half sizes, right? So.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. we can repeat it multiple times. What about if they are
really tall?
Oh, we can't find 60 because that's not in our window.
Oh.
So in order to find really tall, we would have to change our view window.
I didn't realize that it had to actually be.
Yeah.
Find it.
So it actually only calculates based off of the range. The domain. So if you typed in, like I typed in 60 for X, and so because it's not within my view window, it won't give it to me. However, it doesn't matter what your range value or what your Y value ends up being and what your range is. So that's actually kind of interesting to know. So if we needed to change this, let's do 55 to, let's say, let's do 80. Now I can actually, it looks like a much steeper line now. So now I can actually calculate 55, 60, someone who's 5 foot, what their shoe size should be approximately. And so, that's pretty close to, and we can even, let's take a look at what 55 is. So you'll see 55, they'll give you the answer for 55 inches, but it's not on the screen. So the range doesn't affect anything, it's your domain. So as long as what you're searching for is within that domain of your window, then you'll be able to get an answer. So that's something good to keep in mind. But as you can see, it's very easy to change your view window. All right, any questions so far on just kind of collecting data and having discussions with students and, doing different things?
Nothing that I can
on the calculator. All right. So the next thing I wanted to jump to is we have a workbook that was written by teachers for teachers that has specifically for statistics. So this is the table of contents, and I will send this out. Actually, let me. upload this so that you guys can have a copy of it if you're interested. But as you can see, we have 15 different activities, and they range anywhere from basic statistics. So like the first two activities are permutations and combinations, just, kind of probability type stuff. Activity 3 through 7, I believe, yes. 3 through 7 are the ones that are closer to some of the one variable, two variable data that we've been looking at, collecting data and, sorry, I'm trying to do too many things at the same time. Collecting data, evaluating the data, and what does that really mean? So here is the table of contents. So all of these activities are written for what we consider the 9750 G2, so which is the previous version of the calculator that we're using today. However, just because we upgraded the model and the model name has actually changed, doesn't necessarily mean that any of the functionality has changed. So you are more than able to use all of these different activities, even with a different calculator model. In fact, that's true for all our graphing calculators. So if you find some activities that you like or an investigation that you like, but it's not necessarily written for that calculator model, you can still use it. Most of the, I would say 99% of the button pushing is exactly the same. The displays might look a little bit different just because one's black and white, one's color. One of our graphing calculators, actually the 9750 G2 calculator here, that's listed here is a linear display versus our graphing calculator here has what we call a natural textbook display. So I can show you that real quick. If I go back to run matrix, typing out my fractions would be display with a numerator and denominator with that horizontal bar in between. All right, so the professional basketball salaries, that's a one variable statistics activity, as well as the cost of car insurance, and then you get into some two variable here with the World Cocoa Market, the years of your life, and then spending too much money actually dives back into kind of one variable, but not necessarily linear, actually two variable, but not necessarily linear. So these are some good example or some good activities. And even if, maybe to give you guys some good ideas, this would be fun, definitely as like kind of a project based if you had the students research for professional basketball salaries. So I'm actually let's jump to that activity. So I'm gonna show you where you guys can get those. So I'm gonna go to our CasioEducation.com homepage, and we are going to go to resources and then go to activities and sample questions. And then we're gonna scroll down to the 9750 G, actually I'm gonna do the G2. And you'll get this large PDF that has a bunch of different activities strung together. So we're gonna scroll, everything is in alphabetical order. So professional basketball salaries is here. So it starts at page 411. So I'm gonna hover over this top bar right here and type in 411, and it'll jump straight to that activity. So each of these activities starts off with like a teacher notes page, some background information that the students will need to use, prior knowledge, common mistakes, how they can provide evidence of learning, some definitions that they'll need to know or find out if they're just starting off. And then we have a couple pages of a how-to. So once again, what are the things that the students need to know how to do on the calculator in order to be able to accomplish this activity successfully. And then it dives into the activity itself. So you can definitely, do a spin on this activity. This activity compares basketball salaries for two different teams, or takes a look at the ones for two different teams. So one thing you can do is have them research their own personal favorite team, or we can take a look at the most recent winners, which also happens to be the Los Angeles Lakers that won the recent NBA finals, the NBA competition. And then take a look at even comparing the numbers that we have here to the numbers of salaries they have, they're paying like right now in 2020, or even what is anticipated for 2021, if you can find that. So just some different ideas on how we can take these activities that have been written and maybe adapt them to update them a little bit. Because, you know, they could definitely, some of these could use a little bit of update. You know, some of the numbers are different, definitely probably not accurate or old. And then it does, some of the activities will have extensions, and then others, and then most of them will, all of them will actually have a solution based on the numbers and the questions that are asked in that actual activity. All right. And then also another good resource for teachers, if you go back to our main homepage, you can get access to the software. So you can have this and you can present and teach from your computer, you know, even virtually or in the classroom. So in order to find that, you would go to, from our main page, scroll down a little bit to our Casio Cares landing page. And then if you scroll down to download emulator calculator software, it'll take you to a spot to be able to download our emulator software. So it is typically a 90-day trial period, which means that our current Casio Cares program is not going to work anyways, because we are already within, because that expires at the end of December. So if you download the trial software now, you'll automatically have it, you know, for 90 days after that.
Yeah, 90 days. And
yeah,
this one's hard to find because
yes, and that's why
9750, but
yes. So the 9750 G3 is part of the 9860 or the G3 series. So this is the software. If you're looking for that specific model, this is the calculator you would want to download. And then you would, once you download that and open up the software, if you go to File, you can change the calculator model. And this is where you can change it to the 9750 G3.
The 9860
Go ahead.
G3 is what, a European?
Yes, it's
model?
the international model. Yeah, the European international.
So not
European
available in the US.
In this US, correct. So the 9750 G3 is the US version. All right, so then you choose that, and then I think this is like a French version.
Well, we don't want the French version.
Yeah, which we don't want either, but that is the, yes. So that is the calculator you would want to download, so if you wanted the software. But you also have options to download some of the other ones we have. If you're looking for the G2 series, this is the calculator you would want to download here. All right, and it does the same thing. It has the different models, so that has the 9860 G2 as well as the 9750 G2. Right. Or if you're looking to download software for one of our color graphing calculators, I would recommend the CG50,
yeah,
which is this one here.
Definitely.
Yeah, which is the newer version. All right. Any questions?
Nope, not that I can see.
All right. If not, then this is going to actually be a very short and sweet webinar, unless there is something else that you guys want to see on the calculator itself. I do want to dive in, if we're talking statistics and collecting data. If I go back out to the main menu, all our graphing calculators now come with this cool feature or cool add-in called Probability Simulator. So, you know, if you want to simulate any type of probability and then take a look at that data, this is one way to do it without actually having to physically do it, or search online for a, you know, an app or something else that will simulate the data for you. So you can see there are 6 different options. We have coin toss, dice roll, spinner, marble grab, card draw, and random numbers. So coin toss is exactly what you would think. I'm going to toss a coin. It has a little cute simulation to go with it, and then you can decide, you know, whether the filled-in circle is heads and the non-filled-in is tails, or vice versa. And then you can do individual tosses. I really hope this coin isn't weighted. Oh, there we go. Which that is something you can do as well. You can actually weight the coins if you wanted to try to.
Cheating.
cheat a little bit and test your students out. But the plus N allows you to do multiple attempts, so you're not doing having to do a single toss at the same time.
Add a couple to show that you don't have to sit there and watch the coin actually
Okay.
tossed 100 times.
So we'll do 10.
That could be painful.
Yeah, and it'll simulate one toss, and then it'll just start doing all of them.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, it's not going to show each individual toss. So it actually goes pretty quickly in order to collect all the data. So if one thing, as I mentioned, the weightedness, so you would press shift and menu for your setup. And this is where you can make some changes. Excuse me. If you wanted to look at multiple coins being tossed, if you wanted to look, if you wanted to seed or random, if you wanted to do weighted, I think you have to go to advance. And yes, and this is where you could weight. So right now we see that our heads and tails are evenly weighted. And then if you make any changes, you can press F6 here to go back to the initial settings. So I'm not going to change anything. So once we have all that data, we can store the data in the different lists. So you can see if we didn't want to override some of our data, we can change which lists we want it to go into. We can take a look at the table, or we can take a, nope, I don't want to do that. Take a look at the graph itself. I just zoomed in version of the graph.
So if you do it to the list, you can look at different types of graphs, right?
Yes.
Because that's obviously just a bar.
Yeah, these are just 2 bar graphs. Yeah, so you can look at the different types of graphs when we import into our statistics menu. Now do realize when I press exit, that means I'm going to go back out to the initial probability simulator window or menu, so it will clear out all your data. So if you're not done with the data that you just collected or simulated, make sure that you don't press exit. So it does at least give you that nice pop-up message to remind you, hey, you're going to lose all your data. So now if you'll see, if I go back into coin toss, I have to start back over.
Second one, yeah.
Yeah, but like we showed you with plus N, it's very easy to collect the data again. All right, so dice roll is very similar. It'll roll a 6-sided dice. You can change how many sides if you want. We'll go into the setup here. Nope. There we go. We can weight one side of the dice if we want. Again, trying to throw things off a little bit.
Make it be a 4-sided dice or
We can, look right here. So die size, we can go do anything from 4, 6, 8, 12, or 20.
Interesting.
Yeah. So those are the different options. We can have multiple dice as well, up to 3. And you can also turn the animation off completely if you want. If you don't want to see the, see one of the dice or the dice roll at all.
That's part of the fun, though.
That is kind of the fun. Spinner is very similar. If we go into F3, this is 4 sections. So with a spinner, you can have up to 8 sections. And you can also, if you go back up to highlight settings, you can change the weight or the probability of each of the sections if you need to. So let's keep going through. Marble grab is very cool. It'll pull out a marble. So you see here our bag has, 5 marbles. So it'll pull out a different marble, hopefully. There we go.
Ooh, that's a
yeah, and then we
little animation, isn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of a cool animation. And then also, this is something that's kind of cool because we can change the different marbles, and then talking about replacement, whether that's on or off. So does that marble go back in, or does that marble stay out? And then
yeah, that's
and changing the number of marbles as well, I think is where you could change them here. Yeah. And then card draw is kind of fun. This one's definitely a fun animation to watch because it actually shows you the different cards that get pulled.
I really like the simulations, especially if you're face-to-face with kids. I used to try to do these things with actual, cards and marbles and all this, and it becomes a little messy.
Yeah, it definitely becomes messy. So
Or we
yeah.
lost things.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is neat because you can do this whether you're face to face with the students. If the kids have the calculator, it comes on the calculator, or or if you're not face to face, because we know a lot of teachers are still, doing virtual school or remote learning. So this is something that you can do online. And so, like I said, the students can download the software as well. They have a 90-day trial. We offer 1 year and 3-year subscriptions. And we do offer a little bit of a discount if you buy, more multiples subscriptions at a time. So, even for a short period of time when you're doing specifically, probability simulations and collecting data this way, this is a good example because you have access to it for 90 days. And I think most of these units probably don't take 90 days to teach, hopefully. So something to think about for sure. And then random numbers. So it'll automatically start collecting or start pulling random numbers for you.
Can you do it with just one, or is the random number generator a better way to do that?
So, I mean, you can definitely do one. So this is kind of a fun way to do it, but you could also do random integers in Run Matrix, which might be easier. This might be a fun way to do, or maybe an easier way to do teams or groups.
I was gonna say, that's how I used to pick them,
yeah,
being called on in a group or
right,
back random, so they didn't think I was picking on anyone.
Right. So this might be an easy way to do random, to generate random numbers if you're trying to put kids in groups. Like if you're doing in-person learning, maybe if you do 4 to a group, if let's say we have 30 kids, well, let's do 28 kids. How's that? And then this is kind of neat too, because you can set it up to where it doesn't repeat. Because if you use a random integer in function in Run Matrix, it doesn't allow you to turn that on and off. So you will get repeats, right? So if you're trying to, set up a group. Right. So this is great because if you are trying to set up like groups, then it won't repeat the numbers. All right, so now that I'm done making changes, I'm gonna press exit. That'll clear it out. So now I'm gonna try. All right, so whoever number 18, 20, 26, and 15 are, in your class are on your roster. So this is actually kind of an easier way to form groups if, you're starting off the school year or starting off the, a 6 weeks grading period and you just want to do random groups. Although we all know sometimes that's not the best way to do things.
No.
Although it did I did turn repeat off, didn't I?
You did turn repeat off.
And then there's 11, so it's still not perfect. So I wonder if that repeat is for within the same set.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah. Well, you learn something or figure something out. Yeah, so that repeat is definitely for within the same set, the numbers are not repeated. So then I guess, again, it's not quite ideal. Yeah, because there's 20 as well, which I already had. So, and there's 13. All right. Well, sort of help you form groups. Not great. So, any questions, or is there anything else you want to see on the calculator itself? Just because this is a newer model, so we definitely want to share anything that you want to see on it. Remember, you can type the questions in the chat panel.
I don't see anything.
All right. And I'm going to go back to our PowerPoint. So thank you all for joining us tonight. We do have 2 more webinars focused on our products coming up in November. This is the last webinar for the month of October. We're kind of slowing things down a little bit because we know that most teachers are either trying to wrap up the semester or they're I mean, we know things are changing almost weekly or even daily in classes in schools right now. So we just want to be cognizant of your time outside of the classroom. So we only have 2 more webinars for the year, and then we plan on starting back up maybe in February of next year. So we'll, so definitely check out the 2 websites there for our schedule. We'll have those up there. So our next webinar is Visualizing Calculus with ClassPad.net. And then on November 19th is Applications and Connections to Algebra Solutions with Calculators. So we're going to take a look at our different graphing calculators, and I think even a scientific calculator on that one. And then Karen, I'll let you introduce the rest of the slides.
And we are finishing up our Equity in Education webinar series that we've been doing in partnership with Todos and Benjamin Banneker Association. So there's 2 more left. Then we're taking a break from that as well until next year. So on October 20th, we have one, Restoring Indigenous Identities in Mathematics from Land-Based Pedagogies, Implications for Black and Brown Communities. And that's with Dr. Okay, I know I'm going to say this wrong, Filiberto Barajas Lopez. I think I said that.
I think that's pretty close.
Good guess. And then October 27th at 7, this is with Dr. Marilyn Strutchen, and that's Creating Equitable Classrooms via Culturally Inclusive Mathematics Teaching. These have been really interesting webinars. If you haven't had a chance to join us, they are really very insightful, and we've got them all recorded on our Casio education webinar site, which is linked right there.
Yes, and if you missed any of the ones equity and education webinars and want to go back and watch them or even rewatch them if you had joined, they are on our YouTube site. So if you go to youtube.com/Casio Prism, you'll find those there, as well as any webinars that we did on our scientific or graphing calculators, you'll find there as well.
Okay, I think that's it. Thank you, Amy.
I do see one.
Playing.
It is. I do see one question about importing data from a website. So it is not super easy to do it, but you would have to create a .csv file if you had data from a website, or you would just simply type in all the values. So the easiest way to do it is to import it via a .csv. So let me actually go back out to the emulator software. And if we go back to the main menu, and I press F6 a couple of times, you see CSV here. And this is where you can load the file there. And then it'll go in there. And then if you are wanting to share that, you can also do that with a via computer to actual handheld calculator. So if you're not using the software, the emulator software, and then once you upload it once to a calculator, you can use like the 3-pin connectors to transfer those values or that data to other calculators. We actually have one of our AP statistics trainers that does that a lot, because that way he can use a lot of data. He uses a lot of data in his AP workshops, and so it's just easier for him to to do that. So he does, CSV files. So we have that as well. Thank you for asking. Yeah, good question. Any other questions?
Okay.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much for joining us tonight, and we hope you guys have a good rest of the evening.
And this will be up tomorrow. The recording will be up tomorrow if you wanted to go look at something again, up on our YouTube channel. Yep. Okay. Well, good night, everybody. Thank you. Thanks, Amy.
Thanks, Karen.